Welcome back everybody, Robert Marzullo here from Ram Studio Comics, and today's video is going to be on character development. So we'll go ahead and get started. I've got a 11 by 17 mock-up of Bristol board here on my screen using Sketchbook Pro 7 and working at 300 DPI. So I'll take the standard pencil brush, and what I like to do with any character is just start off with the head. And one of the things that I like to do is, as I'm developing this character, is think about exactly who this character is, what this character is. So if you're working from a script, that definitely helps. Hopefully you have some very descriptive words to give you a mental picture of this character. In this particular one, I'm going to start off with a traditional, superhero type character, and give them the broad jawline and the very structured, muscular features, that kind of thing. So this will just be a head and bust, but I just want to explain to you as I do this what goes into the visualization process and how I come to my artwork as I progress. So as you see, I use the circle method. I draw a jawline off the bottom. Now if you feel that that's even too advanced for you, not a problem. You can simply draw the circle, do the line through the middle like that, and then just do a wedge shape like this. And then from that wedge shape, another like that kind of turned pyramid shape like that. This one you have to perceive it as disappearing into recessed space, but it's essentially the same shape, but squished down to recede into space. So those are the main shapes. If I was to draw those with another color just to show you, and let me pick a red actually, it would be the circular shape here, the line through the middle for placement, the wedge shape, and the pyramid or triangular shape off the jawline, just like that. And you can do that from any angle. So those are the main shapes that I see when I construct something like this. Okay, so now what I do is I'll immediately place the ear. Also kind of use this as a bit of my reference point for where the eyes are going to go. Generally the eyes are halfway from the top of the head to the chin. Halfway from there to there is the nose, halfway from there to there is the mouth. Now that's just, a loose description. There's obviously a lot of variations with the way that people are shaped, so you can't use that for every character. You wouldn't want to use that for every character. And depending on expressions, these things are all going to move around, obviously. So I kind of do these, shape of where the eye cavities are, like that. And I'll just be honest here, at this stage I give myself a lot of reference points. I create a lot of shapes, and I'm just going to go and scribble those in, and you can follow along. But you really want to figure out what shapes work for you mentally to paint the picture of the character. And I'll kind of over detail at this stage, and nothing's concrete, nothing's set in stone. I basically just sketch. At this point I'd say I don't even really know exactly what the character looks like. I generally have an idea as to this being a hero type character, but that's about it. I'll have a slightly opened mouth. You also want to get in the habit of not drawing every character with the same blank expression. So you want to practice a variety of expressions as much as possible. Even ones as simple as a slightly open mouth, kind of mid speech maybe, or whatever, or a reaction kind of look to something that's being said. But the part that I want to stress is by doing all these sketch lines, all this little scribble work, and then soft erasing it down, I can build up. I kind of look at it like I'm molding a piece of clay, because I'm creating something, creating this character. And if I just look at it like I'm drawing on a piece of paper, then maybe I won't take it as far or get something as refined as I would like to. But if I think of it that this, creation is a piece of clay and I can model it and change it and manipulate it, then it kind of frees up my mind to think a little bit more dimensional and not so 2D, even though it is a 2D image, obviously, but you want to try to, you're trying to break the boundary of your perception. That's how your imagination, excels, and then you come up with all kinds of cool, crazy, neat things that you never imagined you could have come up with. So oftentimes I'll draw the planes of the faces, so that's what this shape here is. I'm kind of defining a plane of the forehead, plane of the brow, plane of the cheek. So that's all just reference to see how, how flattened out those areas need to be to give him some real definition. So there's my very scribbly phase. So now what I'll do is go ahead and take this a little bit further and clean that up. And let's go ahead and give him pick our hairdo while we're at it, and it'll just be I'll show you how scribbly these hairdos start off. Right there, that's a hairdo. And then we'll say he's kind of looking off to the side with a dead stare. So there's our rough sketch of that hero-esque type character. Far from perfect at this stage, but that's exactly what I want. So now I'll move that character over. Oh, scaled it there. Move him over. Actually, I'll move him to the left. Shrink it down. Hold space bar, I can zoom back. Hold this icon and then drag over to duplicate the layer. Click here and move over. And now I've got a copy of that rough sketch. And now I can soft erase this down. And I like to soft erase almost to the point where I can't see it. And the reason why is it becomes less of a distraction as I draw into the next layer or the next rendition of this line work. If the line work's a little bit too solid, then I end up wanting to trace it more. So I'm not trying to trace, I'm trying to refine this line work and come up with some changes, even if they're minute, but changes that allow this to be a better piece. And I can still keep this very sketchy. It doesn't need to be, you don't want to take it right from a rough sketch to inked work. If you feel confident in doing that, by all means do so, but I just feel that to get a really neat piece of art with a lot of good character, you might want to give it a couple layers of refinement. At least I do. That's what works for me. So and at this stage I kind of figure out little things about the look of the character. I'm starting to want to go with more of the scowl, so I embellish and add to that a little bit more. Kind of looks like he's pretty ticked off. So now, and keeping in mind that generally you're going to be going from a script where maybe you don't have the freedom to draw it any different than what's specified on your script, but this is me just doing a tutorial and showing you, so I'm not going off any kind of script. But and then other times you'll work from something and they'll totally leave that open. The writer or editor, whoever you're working with, will sometimes just say, use your own discretion. So you can kind of play with emotions and and sometimes you can even change things just for the sake of changing it if you think that it's going to be better and add to the story. Just be prepared for them to reject it and, ask you to redraw. Now another good thing on this stage of detailing is you can move things around, and I'll show you that here in a second. I do that a lot to my artwork. So, like I said, this isn't by any means the finished rendition of what I would do to a piece even like this. Now if it's a small scene in a panel or a background element, then yeah, I probably wouldn't take it much. It probably wouldn't go any further than this right here as far as refinement. And I would actually thicken up the shadows. Since it is going to be a background element and it's going to get shrunk down, you have to start using less thin lines and more shadows to define the shapes, or else it won't reduce well. Something that a lot of people always forget when they try to draw their beginning comics or their first few comics. They don't think about reduction and the way that they're printed, even though a lot of it's going digital, but it's still something to think about. Okay, so the only thing I could see that I really need to move around is the relationship from the nose to the mouth. I'm not trying to make a perfect piece of art here, but I do want to show you the ability to grab your selection tool, select, say, just the nose, and maybe even the line with the nose, and just pull that back. And you can even put a slight tilt to it like the nose tends to do. It's usually not directly up and down. And to me, the mouth is tucked too far back. Now the mouth does generally sit back further, and I could probably pull this jawline back a bit, but I think what I would rather do instead is move this forward and actually increase the size just a smidge. And I'll just do that over and over again until I get the look that I want. Like, I'm not particularly fond of the way the jaw is and the tissue on the side of the mouth there. I feel that needs to be changed a bit, but we'll just keep progressing forward. But that's one of the ways that you can work with your artwork and keep adjusting things and get it to its finality. And about this part, I start to look at the hair like it's more of kind of ribbons flowing around than just lines. Starts to give it a little bit more weight, if you think of it that way. A couple little strands that, fall down. That's always good for a more realistic depiction. Okay, so let's say that's our superhero ticked off guy. And like I said, I would take this at least to another layer of refinement. Another thing I could do now is start dropping in some of the shadows that I want to see on the character. And also remember, it's perfectly acceptable to just draw the shapes of the shadows and then place little X's on there. If you're handing that off to an inker, they're going to know right what to do with that, so that's perfectly acceptable. And I've read and watched in other demonstrations from other artists that I admire that it's better to draw your shapes of shadows and not draw them in, or draw the shape of them. Like if there's a shadow here, you want to draw that shape and then fill it in, or just do the X's like I spoke about. But I kind of do a little bit of both. Certain areas I want to kind of sketch the shadow in, and other areas I try to remember that rule and just draw the shape. And the thing I notice about shadows, fix this slip here, is that shadows really weight the drawing. They give it another level of dimensional feel. So without good shadows, your drawings will tend to look less grounded in the scene. So it's a really quick way to give that drawing a little bit of pop, and not to mention it also adds, drama and intensity and emotion in the scene. And even though this isn't specifically just about shadows, one quick tip I can give you for shadowing is, and it's real simple obviously, light, dark, and you just carry that through your entire drawing. So everywhere that, you know, you may want to do, say, a large shadow across here from that jaw, it would actually be a little bit more accurate. So let me erase this and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So you want this nice heavy shadow off his hero-esque jaw line. You can shade that in like there. You can leave a little bit of highlight on areas like the anatomy that you want to show off, but with working in digital, I just recommend filling it all in. You know, doing whatever line work or just solid, you know, fill in whatever floats it for you. And then hold Alt, select the background, and now you can draw on a little bit of your highlight anatomy, you know, that you sometimes see in the dark. And it's really just a good way to define the shape. Then you can go back to your black and you can do maybe some lines or something like that, whatever. But that's all just design choices. But then the light, dark, light thing I was telling you about is like, say there was a heavier shadow off the sternocleidomastoid right here. You just have to make sure to balance that with the next level of, you know, light hitting, say, this area, and then that's where your shadow would hit. So it's light, dark, light. It's, you know, it's obvious. It almost doesn't take explaining, but I think that a lot of people, you know, don't keep that in mind as they're shading, and then they tend to end up with kind of mucky shadows or no consistency to their shadows. And I'm guilty of that too, by the way. Shadows can be very tricky, and it's hard to go through the piece and remember exactly where your light source is. It's real easy to deviate and just start having fun with your line work or whatever and veer off from your, you know, your game plan. Okay, so I found a little bit more of this shadow. Like so. And again, light, dark, light, dark. If you can see that, I'm just kind of staggering the fact that I'm picturing that the hair is shaped like this and like this. So that's what I'm visualizing for my light source as I shade the hair in. And then if you notice, I'm separating in between strands and bulks of strands because, you know, for one, you don't want to draw every single strand. It would look like that, which would be ridiculous. And then you want to get good at defining larger masses and thinner masses in your shapes of hair. If you study anybody that's really good at drawing hair, you'll notice that they have a lot of depth by overlapping shapes. And I have to work up to that. That's why I shade it this way, and then I soft erase, and usually my finished lines will look more appropriate for the effect that I'm after with hair. And I might just do a larger shadow back here. See how that looks. Then I'll break off that larger shadow into the other shapes. So it doesn't just look like a straight line. Okay, let's pan back. And so you can see definitely a difference from the sketch version to the next version where we're closer to pencils but still not entirely there. You know, I still have some things that are inaccurate in the design that I want to change. And I'm never done till I'm done. You know, like my final rendition is when I basically have accepted that there's certain elements that I would like to change, but maybe I need to keep progressing forward because I have a deadline or whatever. So it's always something, you know, I could honestly work on a drawing for days and months if I was so afforded the time. But that's not how professional illustration works, so you have to put the baby to bed, so to speak. So believe me, I would love to just keep drawing on this until I got this character perfect and I could sit there and praise myself into my perfected drawing, if that makes any sense. But instead, what I have to do is get it to a level that's acceptable and that looks good and that meets the requirements for the job. So now what I'll do is take this, and usually for my finished line work, I like to convert this to blue line. So I'll tone this down. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can either lock transparency and grab the airbrush and then grab a blue line that you like, or a blue tone that you like. And with the transparency locked, it'll just color that line work. You can brush over that. The other way is just to add a layer and turn it to screen mode, and anything that you drop behind that layer will turn to blue line. And I talk about that in some of my other videos, so. But for now, I'll just show you this method. I can turn that back up because the blue line softened it just enough. So now you can see it kind of matches the blue line on my digital Bristol board there. So now I can add a new layer, turn this to black, grab my hard pencil, which is more like an inking brush to me, and I can get in here and refine my line work again. And now what I can do is I start thinking more about line weight. You know, I can still make changes to the structure of the character, but it's more me focusing on cleaning up the lines and rendering. And I might add little details like maybe a line here on the chin to give them a more, you know, defined chin, or another little feature line. And I love adding good line weight. To me, that's what really sets apart a nice drawing, is having good variation in line weight. Now here you're not going to see the line weight as much because I'm filling that in black right here, so I'll do that real quick. Take this whole shape. And I can grab the paint bucket tool, and sometimes that happens. Why? Because I left the ear open like a silly person. There we go. And I try to think of this as much as possible like I'm using a traditional paintbrush or a crow quill. But there are some definite advantages to doing this digitally, like the fact that you can erase any of your ink lines or simply grab white and start painting in with white with no worries that, you know, something's going to go wrong and you're going to ruin this beautiful piece of art. So the freedom that it allows you is tremendous. And I'm intentionally trying to make the lines different weight and a different feel. So I'm scribbling a little bit, I'm pulling a line, and that's all me, you know, I'm thickening the line dramatically there. That's all me trying to give a little bit of personality to the line, if you will. And the really neat thing about Sketchbook Pro, you hold space, you can rotate the page. And for an artist like myself, where I like to pull a lot of my lines downward, it makes a huge amount of difference. And basically speed, because I can always undo multiple times and then keep cleaning up the line work and get it the right way. But if I can turn the page and do it in one try, then that's a huge time saver. And this hard pencil tool, and I'll show you the settings before I finish this so that you can copy these down, but the hard pencil tool is a very neat way to ink. It works really well, and it's one of my favorite inking brushes digitally now. There's something about the responsiveness and the way that Sketchbook Pro's brushes work. It really amazed me right off the start. Another little technique that's not too important, but it's cool to do, is break away your lines and add like a little line break and then a dash. And you don't want to overdo it. It's real easy to want to do that to every line, but I think what it does is, again, it adds just a little bit more texturing and areas of interest to your line work, and it's almost addicting, so you do got to be careful and sparingly with it, but it gets you to not think about everything like, you're tracing the object. If you trace the object too much in your forms, especially your characters, they'll look very flat and very boring. So you start breaking away your lines, especially where light hits. So if there's an area where the light's hitting directly on that form, you can actually erase that line back and it looks a little bit more believable. It's like you're inking a highlight in there with the absence of the dark. So you see I'm adding a little bit of difference and depth into the line work. I'm staying pretty close to what's already there, but I'm cleaning it up just a bit as I go. So it's pretty much your last chance to refine the work and, improve upon it. And obviously throwing in, little line breaks and shading as I go. And if you notice, I'm pulling each one of my lines a couple times. I'm really bad with feathering a lot of my line work, just the way that I draw. I always like to pinpoint that or show that because I don't want people to think that I just draw these perfectly clean lines each time, because I don't. I actually sketch the line. And maybe some guys do just do a nice clean pull, but I don't. So if you were to zoom up on my lines, you'd probably see a lot of inconsistency in the clarity of it. And keep in mind my anatomy and the facial structure of this character is very skewed, but I'm going for a more stylized representation. If I wanted, you know, some, I don't know, whatever the idea of the perfect male, rendition, then I would look up a, model reference or whatever and draw from that. But that's not what I'm doing here. I'm actually just trying to come up with a character that's stylized and, looks comic book, oriented, and, just draw from the brain box. And in turn, sometimes you're going to get less than accurate results, and other times you're going to draw stuff that you're tickled pink with, and you think that you're awesome that day. So that's kind of the risk factor that you play with doing it this way. But to me, it's a necessity because I don't know, I just can't really pull from reference every single drawing. I've got to be able to do this from my mind so that I can flow through the panels in the book quickly enough. But there are times when it makes a lot of sense to just grab reference and you'll come up with a better drawing by the time you're done. So I definitely don't knock reference. I'll just fill that in. Okay, and then here I'll add some more, line variation and texture lines to give them, not these dots though, I want to give them pimples. Give them just a little bit more of a grimace by doing that. Zoom back and just check my work. I don't like this line in the jaw there, and I'm not digging the shadow as much now. So this is the other thing that kind of comes out to me in the end a little bit more. I can kind of see some of the things always look better, in my opinion, in the sketch than they do in the ink. So that's where and that's why I zoom out, flip the artwork, things like that, to kind of check my artwork and eliminate things like that to me, look like they would have worked in the sketch, but then again don't work so well in the final line work. And now I'm just pressing harder with the same brush and trying to fill in some shadows, still sketching on a little bit of the line work because I want to show some of the way that the hair would break apart. You wouldn't get a solid black shadow unless he was, really sitting like kind of in the dark and you did, one of those extreme light sources to the one side of the face. But that's not really what I'm showing here. I may even go back and brush in some strands through here. I think that's still too dark. So now what I'm doing as I ink this in is I'm trying to picture a little bit more of the shapes of the hair that you would see with the shadow. So I'm starting to get that form to appear a little bit more. Now the other thing that I would do is tilt this and move this over, and then now show the segment. There's going to be a little bit darker spot here, but then it's going to quickly break off into a more lit area. So I'll just show a few of the clumps or strands that are bunched together. Turn it and see if that looks about right. It's close. And then, like I said, I can hold Alt, select the white canvas for the background, and then I can get into here and paint a little bit more of the highlights of the hair. So I don't think in this particular type of shadow the hair would be completely blacked out back here, maybe behind the ear. That's about it. But that's all, again, that's design choices. I can hold Alt, select the black there for speedy workflow. Get right back to inking over here. Again, I want to show a little bit of shadowing right here just to add some depth from the forehead to the bulk of the hair right here. And you can always do a darker line at the bottom, a lighter line at the top like that, and then just kind of go back and forth. Something like that. And really I should probably just be drawing my shadows in. It's really quicker. Just go like that, make sure it's all filled in. Maybe that little line break there. Then drop the paint bucket tool like that. And sketching in some of the hair strands and trying to picture the way that it would flow with the existing clumps of hair. And the other thing I like to do is just drop the blue line out as I go and see if it's starting to take shape. One of the things that allows me to do is look at it objectively and go, okay, I think I need to get in here and add a little bit more line work and shading. And so what I'm going to do is fill in these eyebrows here. I'll show you another cool way to do these. So you can fill those in. You can just do a couple little strands of hair kind of poking out, whatever the shape is you're after. And then again, hold Alt, select the background, and you can just get in there and do just a little bit of texturing. Be careful not to overdo it. And it just adds a little bit more to look at. Again, if it's not a close-up shot, there's really no point in doing that. This particular rendition would be a little bit more of a close-up. So that's when you can start adding in all the little line work and details, and as long as you know they're not going to get lost when the artwork's reduced. And then at this stage, this is where I just try to round out the form and give it more areas of interest with the line work. I try to make sure that I don't just use the same type of line work through the whole drawing. So I vary the line work a lot as far as thickness, weight, feathering. To me, I'm just texturing the character. So I'll do a little bit of cross hatching. But some of it's just purely cosmetic and design oriented. Now a line like this that I'm putting there, to me, defines a little bit of highlight on the side of the face. That's what all this is. So I'm trying to basically picture what it would look like if there was a glare on his face, which to me explains why there would be the heavier shadows over here anyways. Again, these are just texture lines. A little glare on the eye, their eyes. And that's about it. The rest is just doodling and having fun with it and seeing how far you can take it. And another great thing about the digital aspect of it is that you can do that and not really fear, you know, you're not worried about ruining your piece. What I often do too at this stage is if I am worried about something that may not work and I may want to totally eliminate it, I just create layers. So I use those layers to add in stuff that I might be a little bit skeptical of and then eliminate it layer by layer. If I don't like it, I just take it away and there's no harm, no foul, no big deal. So that's just a tip for you. Do whatever feels natural to you. Okay, and what was the other thing that was sticking out? To me, I think the shoulder's up higher. It should slope down, so it should come more into right about there. So let's see, I'm on the entirely same layer. Now, something like that, let me just show you real quick. I would probably, let's say, erase this line a bit, right to about there. Now let's take the selection tool and grab right through here and see if we can just move that down to where I'm picturing it should be. Maybe a slight tilt. Yeah, I think that's more correct. And then I can just fill that line back in. So just a quick, easy way to adjust that and not worry too much about it. And this shadow probably should be right here. And I jump back to the wrong brush. But yeah, so that's essentially how I would work through a sketch of a character and, you know, kind of define that character. I mainly wanted to show you how I would make judgment calls on working through a character like this. You know, I think that's one of the things that don't get explained enough when people draw this, you know, kind of neat piece of artwork and you're watching them do it. But they don't tell you what's going on in their mind and why they make certain design choices. So that's essentially why I wanted to do this particular video. So hopefully this has helped you kind of understand the process a little bit more. And be sure to let me know in the comments, you know, what you think and what would help you in the future, because that's what I want to bring to you. You know, I want to make sure that future videos are all, you know, explained in the way that you would want to learn. So let me know what you think. So that's essentially what I would do, and obviously I can keep going. I think I would bring the shoulder down even further now. Now I'm looking at it. But that's what I do. I just go through and I keep nitpicking the artwork on the final stage and also watching the clock as I do it. So that's everything that goes into delivering professional grade artwork. You know, it's not always that the artwork is perfect. I would love for it to be perfect every time, but you know, there's deadlines involved, and sometimes a less than perfect piece of art that's delivered on the deadline is going to be a lot more important than a totally refined piece of art that misses its deadline entirely. So thanks very much for watching. I hope this has helped you, and let me know if it has. Be sure to like, subscribe, share if you don't mind. And as always, keep drawing, keep having fun. We will talk to you soon.